Today's lesson is Cillian Murphy, from aspiring rock star to actual film star. Hi, everybody. I'm Roger.
Hello, I'm Kiki.
And it's our person unit for the month of January. And we're going to be talking about an Irish actor whom you may have seen in a movie that came out last summer about the guy who worked on the atomic bomb. That film was called Oppenheimer. And, of course, we're talking about the actor Cillian Murphy.
That's right. And last summer when this film came out, it came out on the exact same day as Barbie. So there were a lot of internet memes that went viral, and they called it Barbenheimer. And basically it was when everybody wanted to decide if I was going to go watch Barbie or Oppenheimer or both.
I think Barbie won that contest, but still the movie Oppenheimer is worth seeing, so if you have a chance, check it out. And, of course, you can see Cillian Murphy acting in that movie, and that's why we're going to talk about him today. He has become quite famous in recent years, so I guess he used to want to be a rock star, but he's actually ended up to be a film star, or a movie star, we could also say. So let's find out about his life and times. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson right now, and we'll come back to talk about it.
Cillian Murphy, from aspiring rock star to actual film star. Directed by the Oscar-nominated filmmaker Christopher Nolan, Oppenheimer received rave reviews, with Cillian Murphy's superb performance in the title role taking center stage. And yet, in spite of his outstanding acting in Oppenheimer and many earlier films, Murphy once had an entirely different show business career in mind.
大家好，我们来看标题中的单字 aspiring， 它是形容词，指的是雄心勃勃的或是有抱负的。例如 Michael is an aspiring musician who often posts videos of himself covering hit songs on YouTube. Michael 是名充满抱负的音乐人，常常在 YouTube 上张贴自己翻唱畅销歌曲的影片。又或者是 These aspiring entrepreneurs presented their ideas to a group of investors at the event. 这些有抱负的企业家们在活动中向一群投资者展现他们的想法。下一个我们来介绍名词 rave， 它的意思是大力赞扬或是吹捧。例如 People's reviews of this movie were a rave， 人们对这部电影的评价是好评不断。又或者是 The restaurant's signature pasta got a rave and many new customers came for it。 那家餐厅的招牌意大利面受到热烈欢迎，有不少新顾客慕名而来。接下来看到形容词 superb， 表示极好的或是杰出的。例如 Matt's performance in the baseball game was simply superb. Matt 在那场棒球赛里的表现简直是太棒了。再来介绍片语 have somebody 或是 something in mind， 有想着或是心里盘算着点点点的意思。例如 The manager had Kelly in mind for this job because she was the most qualified person. 经理想着要让 Kelly 接下这份工作，因为她是最能胜任的人。或是 Do you have anything in mind as a solution to this problem? 这个问题你想到解决的方法了吗？
Okay, so again, we're talking about the range of talents of Cillian Murphy. We're saying he went from an aspiring rock star to being an actual film star. So if you're aspiring, that means you aspire for something or aspire to something. You really want to do this thing. That is your goal. And again, as we're going to find out, he did want to be a rock star at the beginning, but for some reason he ended up being a movie star.
Okay, so let's find out why. So we talked about the movie Oppenheimer. It was directed by the Oscar-nominated filmmaker Christopher Nolan. Oppenheimer received rave reviews, with Cillian Murphy's superb performance in the title role taking center stage. Wow, this one's a long one. So Christopher Nolan is a very famous director or filmmaker. So a filmmaker is a person who directs or produces a film for a movie or TV. Now, of course, back in the day when TV or movies were still made with negatives, film negatives. That's why we use the word a filmmaker. They will produce a film. But of course, nowadays, younger generations will only think of movies being digital. But what's interesting is Oppenheimer was actually filmed on film.
Interesting. Okay, I guess it's more common for films to be shot on digital formats using sensors and things like that with high resolutions, but I guess they actually shot it on film. It does have a different kind of appearance that way. They probably did it to make it look more authentic to the period they were depicting, which is during the 1940s when they were developing the atomic bomb. And again, this filmmaker was nominated for an Oscar, so we're saying he's Oscar nominated. And this particular film received rave reviews. So here, rave, it just means really great or really excited interviews. People were just very enthusiastic about this movie.
So sometimes when we're raving about something, it just means that people are so excited about it, they get so crazy about it that people don't really know what they're talking about. So in this case, they're talking about the movie Oppenheimer being really popular or being really good. And that is partly due to Cillian Murphy's superb performance in the title role taking center stage. So here we have title role, which basically means that Cillian Murphy played the main character or the character that the movie is talking about or focuses on. And his performance was just superb. And when something is superb, it is very excellent. It's so good and it's so impressive that people just think it's just super. It's like the word super. So it's superb. It's really good.
Yeah, recently I was at somebody's office and I was served a cup of oolong tea and it was superb. It was very tasty. It was excellent in flavor. But in this particular case, we're talking about his excellent or his superb performance in the title role of this movie. So again, the name of the movie is Oppenheimer. So he was playing the role of Oppenheimer. And he took center stage, which means he was the main focus of the film. And you can take center stage in various different kinds of applications. For example, maybe your company is conducting a market survey and you might take center stage. You might take the main role of conducting this project and everybody thinks you're really great and the company owes its success to you.
So his performance was so superb. Not only was he the main character, his acting was also taking center stage. So he was getting recognized and everyone was praising him. So we continue with, and yet, in spite of his outstanding acting in Oppenheimer and many earlier films, Murphy once had an entirely different show business career in mind. So his outstanding performance, we talked about his performance being superb, but he also had outstanding acting. So his acting was exceptionally good. When something's outstanding, it's wonderful, it's marvelous, it's really good that it stands out so people notice it.
Right. So again, we're talking about him having an entirely different show business career in mind. So if you have something in mind, that means that's what you're thinking about. That is what your plan is. Gee, I've got an idea to suggest handling this situation. Well, what do you have in mind? What's your idea? Can you please tell us? And yes, indeed, he had a different plan at the beginning. And if you're talking about show business or showbiz for short, you could be talking about TV or movies. And you could also talk about being in music. But generally, when I see the word show business, I think of Hollywood and movies and plays and television and things like that.
So let's find out more about Cillian Murphy's background when we listen to part 2.
Growing up in Ireland, Cillian Murphy didn't dream of becoming an actor. Truth be told, he wanted to be a rock star. But fate had other plans for the young man from suburban Cork, and Murphy is now regarded as one of the greatest actors of his generation.
第二部分我们看到片语 Truth be told， 它的意思是老实说或是说真的。例如 The movie looks like it will be fun to watch, but truth be told, it has gotten terrible reviews. 那部电影看起来好像蛮好看的， 但老师说他的评论很糟。又或者说 I pretended that I liked the food Annie cooked, but truth be told, it was awful. 我假装我喜欢的 Annie 做的菜，但老实说真的很难吃。下一个我们看到单字 suburban， 这个形容词的意思是郊区的或是城外的。例如 Suburban life is much quieter than life in a big city. 郊区生活跟大城市相比安静得多。或是Miles is planning to move out of the city center to a suburban district of Taipei. Miles 打算从市中心搬到台北近郊的地区。
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the history of Cillian Murphy. Growing up in Ireland, Cillian Murphy didn't dream of becoming an actor. So this sentence tells us that Cillian Murphy is Irish. He's from Ireland, and he grew up there. But he did not dream of becoming an actor. That was not his original ambition. Truth be told, or to tell you the truth, he wanted to be a rock star. So you may not have imagined this because most people, if they want to be famous, if they want to be an actor or an actress, they need to work hard on that particular craft and they can't really start in other places. Otherwise, they'll be too late. But in this particular case, that was not his original intention. He wanted to be a rock star.
But fate had other plans for the young man from suburban Cork, and Murphy is now regarded as one of the greatest actors of his generation. So fate is basically something that is planned by the universe. It wasn't planned by himself. It just happens to be. So it happened to be that there were other plans for this young man, or there were other plans for Cillian. He wanted to be a rock star, but it turned out that he is now one of the greatest actors in his generation. Now, Cillian is from a suburb called Cork. So in this sentence, we have suburban Cork. And basically, suburban is the adjective used to describe a residential area that is basically on the outside of the city. So some people, they don't want to live right there in the city due to maybe they think there's too many people in the city or it could be too expensive. So usually people move to the suburbs where they're still close to the city if they have to get to work, but there's more space for them if they have families. And he lived in a suburb called Cork.
Right. If you're, say, from Nassau on Long Island, then you are from suburban New York, which is, of course, smaller towns outside a larger city. And he's now regarded as one of the greatest actors of his generation. So here we've got the phrase to be regarded as. You could also say to be considered as, which means people think of you this way. You've received this kind of recognition from lots of different people all over the place. And yes, indeed, lots of people consider him to be one of the greatest actors of his generation. And for sure, he's going to be nominated for an Oscar at the Oscar ceremony, which will take place this year.
That's the end of part 2. Let's find out more about Cillian Murphy. Let's listen.
Murphy, who was born in 1976, was a keen musician from an early age and played in various bands into his early 20s. One of those bands was even offered a record contract, but the band ultimately turned the offer down due to unacceptable terms. Meanwhile, Murphy had started studying law at University College Cork, and it was there that he found his true calling when he began acting in plays for the university's drama society. Soon after, he made his professional acting debut in a play called Disco Pigs.
第三部分我们看到单字 keen， 它是形容词，指的是对某一活动热情的或是热衷的、渴望的。例如 Maggie is keen to engage in volunteer activities. Maggie 热衷于参加志工活动。又或者说Daphne has a keen interest in collecting model airplanes. Daphne 对于收集模型飞机有强烈的兴趣。最后是副词 ultimately， 有最终、最后或是终究的意思。例如 Percy resisted the idea at first, but he ultimately agreed to it. Percy 原先抗拒这个点子，但他最后还是答应了。再看一个例子 After failing many times, Cindy ultimately gave up being a flight attendant. 在历经多次失败后 Cindy 最终放弃了空服员这个职业。
Okay, it's now time for us to talk about the third part of our lesson for today. Murphy, or Cillian Murphy, who was born in 1976, was a keen musician from an early age and played in various bands into his early 20s. So here we've got the word keen, which means you're talented, you're eager, you have a lot of enthusiasm. So he was a keen musician, he was talented, and also very enthusiastic about becoming a musician. And of course, he had this desire from an early age. So he probably grew up listening to the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, and he thought, hey, I'd like to do that too. That looks like a lot of fun. I want to be a rock star as well. And he was talented. He probably played his instrument very well. He was probably a virtuoso.
He played in various bands into his early 20s. So this means that as he was growing up, maybe from his teens and all the way up to his early 20s, which is the age around 20 to 23, 24. During this time, he had participated or he joined a lot of different bands and he performed with them. One of those bands was even offered a record contract, but the band ultimately turned the offer down due to unacceptable terms. So this happens a lot to a lot of bands that are young and they want to have a career in music. They would dream of being offered a contract by a record label. And basically a record contract would be to have the opportunity by a big company, a record label, somebody that will help these musicians or these bands record their music and try to sell their music. Now, they were offered a record contract, but they ultimately turned down the offer. So ultimately, meaning at the end, they decided to reject or they didn't want to sign the contract because what they were offering, they had unacceptable terms. So the things that they were offering to the band, they didn't like it, so they didn't want to accept it.
They had these certain kinds of terms, like they had to produce a number of albums in a certain amount of time, and then they were required to go on the road to promote the album and give a series of concerts all over Ireland and the UK, and they thought that was just too much. Those were unacceptable terms or unacceptable qualifications or obligations, and they ultimately turned the contract down. So ultimately just means in the end, after they thought about it for a while, they said, no, we're not going to accept that. Those terms are just unacceptable. That's just too much. You have too much stuff for us to do.
Meanwhile, or at this time, during this time, Murphy had started studying law at University College Cork. So during this time, while he was playing music with other bands, he also started going to college and he started to study law. And it was there that he found his true calling when he began acting in plays for the university's drama society.
Okay, so your calling is just what you're meant to do in life. It usually refers to your career. So you could think that from a very young age, you were a talented pianist. And you thought, hey, that's my calling, is to be a world-famous pianist. I'm going to play with famous orchestras all over the world and play concertos and things like that. But here he found his true calling, his purpose in life. He began to act in plays for the university's drama society, which could also refer to the drama club there, where people get together because they like drama, they like acting in plays. And soon after, he made his professional acting debut in a play called Disco Pigs. That is a play. It's not actually a film.
That's right. And his acting debut, basically a debut means the first time a person is performing or the first time a person is showing something to an audience. So for example, athletes can also have a debut game, which means it is the first time they're playing a certain game in a certain series. So his first time acting in front of people on the stage, stage, his first debut was in a play called Disco Pigs.
Well, we're referring to this as his professional acting debut, so he probably acted in various plays in the drama society, but he did not get paid for his roles. They probably just put on performances on the university campus, and students could attend and check it out if they wanted to. But he got paid for playing this role in a production called Disco Pigs, so it was his professional acting debut. And the rest is history. Okay, that brings us to the end of the final part of our lesson for today. It's time to listen to Hanny, our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分最后提到 Murphy is now regarded as one of the greatest actors of his generation. 席尼墨菲现在被认为是他这一代最伟大的演员之一。那文中用到 be regarded as 去表达被认为什么什么，它是 regard A as B 的被动用法。那我们来介绍相关的用法哦。好，首先我们看到这个 think of，或者是 see 或是 view 或是 regard 可以表达认为视为，那么主动用法你就可以用 think of 或是 see 或是 view 或是 regard 加上某人或某事物 as 再加上名词或形容词。那被动用法我们就可以用某人或某事物当主词，那后面搭配 be viewed as 或是 be seen as be regarded as 或是 be thought of as 然后再加名词或形容词。那我们看两个例句。She viewed the job as the opportunity of a lifetime. 她认为这份工作是千载难逢的好机会。或是像 Nick is seen as the best player on his team. Nick 被认为是他队上最厉害的球员。好，那另外补充一下，我们也可以用动词 consider 去表达认为，把什么什么视为。那它的主动用法是 consider 某人或某事物。To be 再加名词或形容词，那这个 to be 可以省略，而被动用法是某人或某事物当主词，然后加上 be considered， 后面加上 to be 再加名词或形容词，那一样 to be 也可以省略。举例来说 He has always considered himself to be lucky， 或者是 He has always considered himself lucky， 他一直都认为自己很幸运。或者是像 The actor is considered a fashion icon， 或者是 The actor is considered to be a fashion icon， 也就是那一位演员被视为时尚指标。好，课文第三部分有一句他提到说，席尼墨菲开始在科克大学研读法律，正是在那里当他开始为大学戏剧社表演戏剧时，他找到了真正的职业。那文中用到 It was there that he found 什么什么，表达说正是在那里他找到了什么什么。那这边他是用分列句来强调 there。那我们来学习分列句的句型。我们要强调句子里面的某部分时，常常会用到分列句。那它的步骤呢，是把你原本句子里面要强调的部分摆在 it is 和 that 之间，或是 it was 和 that 之间。那么强调的部分可以是你原本句子当中的主词啊、受词、时间副词或地方副词等等。那么接着呢，你就把句子剩下的部分摆在 that 之后，所以它的句型会是 it is 或是 it was 加上强调部分加 that， 再加句子其余的部分。举例来说 The smell of coffee drew me to the kitchen。 那我们用分列句来强调这个主词 The smell of coffee， 句子就会写作 It was the smell of coffee that drew me to the kitchen。 正是咖啡的香味把我吸引到厨房。好，那补充一下，如果强调的部分是人，我们分列句的 that 可以改用 who 来表示哦。例如 It was Karen who came up with the idea。 想出那个点子的人是 Karen， 正是他想出来的。好，那以上就是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Superb. Amelia's superb skills help lead the soccer team to victory. Outstanding. Samuel will be able to attend his preferred university thanks to his outstanding test scores. Suburban. Mr. and Mrs. Barrett moved to a suburban neighborhood to escape the stress of city life. Keen. Olivia is keen to explore new cultures and has thus signed up for the international exchange program. Ultimately. In spite of some challenges, they ultimately succeeded in starting their own business. Debut. The author's debut novel was a big hit, marking the beginning of a promising career.
Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoy reading along with us. I am Kiki.
I am Roger.
See you next time.